And what are we watching now? Let's see. Vulnerability to Covert Attack by the United States Army Chemical Corps. Interesting, the Chemical Corps. Publication date 1959. All right. So we're probably going to be talking about the Russians, probably. I don't know. Let's find out. Interesting. This tape was transferred from a 16mm film original by Color Lab for the National Library of Medicine. Interesting. The National Library of Medicine. All right. Oh, there we go. Whoa. Vulnerability to covert attack. This is already, I gotta say, this is an interesting symbol that appeared before the title. This, like, I don't even know what to describe this as. Like a hexagon with two, like, commas coming out of it. I wonder what this symbol means.
In an effort to...
not a lot of fanfare for this. We're not getting like an educational, like entertaining program. We're getting like a serious, like military report on the threat or vulnerabilities to covert attack. There's no credits. There's no music playing right now. This is just voice and footage.
Determine the vulnerability of coastal installations, BW attack from offshore, tests were held recently at a large air base. The site selected was ideally...
I feel like the U.S. did so much stuff like this back in the day. I mean, they might be doing it now too, but I feel like, especially, what did I say, 1959? Yeah, we were wargaming every single sort of invasion strategy, and invasion, like, defense strategy.
Suited to a test of this nature. Located on the coast, this vital military installation is bordered by water on two sides.
I wonder where this actually is. Bordered by water on two sides. I bet somebody familiar with the Army might be able to figure this out, but I wonder if they'll just tell us.
Two men, ostensibly on a fishing trip, arranged to rent a small outboard motorboat. After receiving instructions in operating the boat, the fishermen cast off. Once out of sight of the pier, they made for an isolated spot on the shore. Here, a disseminating device filled with a harmless BW agent was put aboard.
BW. He said BW like once or twice already, and I'm kind of curious what that means. I'm just thinking like bioweapon, but there's no way.
The disseminating device and its power source were concealed.
I'm trying to look at this device and figure out even what it is. It looks like a box with like a coil on it. I don't know what even sort of covert attack this is, but I'm already interested. I'm definitely curious of what's going on here.
The disseminating device and its power source were concealed under...
I feel like this totally relates to Don't Talk, though. I feel like that's a good thing to have watched just before this.
...a tarpaulin. Then the men began an apparently aimless cruise up the bayou toward the airbase.
Up the bayou? All right, so they must be somewhere in like Louisiana or Texas.
With weather conditions favorable, the men began to spray the dry simulant agent across the path of a gentle wind blowing toward the airbase.
Oh, they are blowing like a chemical agent. That's interesting.
Spraying was continuous while the boat traveled a distance of 1.5 miles. In the immediate vicinity of the boat, the cloud of biological organisms could not be distinguished.
Cloud of biological organisms. So we are talking about a bioweapon. I can't believe I guessed that. Wow, okay, so what are they doing? They're blowing out like a bioweapon of smoke? Interesting.
From the exhaust smoke of the motor, and it rapidly became invisible as it drifted downwind. The wind of about 3 to 6 miles per hour carried the cloud of simulant agent.
Okay, with this map, we could totally figure out where this is. This looks like somewhere on Texas, though, but that's so interesting. I love seeing old maps like this, too, like this hand-drawn terrain. So you can see, like, the roads through the bayou. You can see this little, like, town, or, like, this little city in the middle, and then you can see these, like, it must be an airport. It's probably, like, military airstrips or something.
Over most of the operations area, administrative area, and base housing, and continued in high concentration.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this line over here is like the line that they dispersed all that BW on. And then this little white area is like the whole area that this bioweapon, if that's what it means, spreads over. That's crazy. It's crazy to think that, like, in this time, not only was the paranoia surrounding, like, nuclear weapons and spies and all that sort of stuff so high. But you have to think that there was also just so many other sorts of weapons that people could have used that people had to anticipate, or that people in the United States military, it was their job to anticipate attacks like this. It's bizarre, one, that we were expecting this, and it's also bizarre that this sort of stuff could have happened. We did not. It's impossible to actually monitor all the seas and all the coastlines to make sure people aren't just dispersing a bioweapon across our coastline. It's so bizarre to watch this sort of stuff for me. I know I've said bizarre about 100 times already, but it's a different era. People had different mentalities and thought processes back then. I would never be worried about this happening now, but I guess we're in an age where, again, bioweapons are becoming more possible again. It's just, there are so many parallels, but there are also so many differences between this and what we're going through in our current modern events.
Several miles beyond. At no time during the operation were the men challenged, questioned, or even suspected of being other than fishermen.
Yeah, see, that's probably the most crazy part to me, is that you could just do something like this gross terrorist bioweapon attack, and just pull it off so easily, no one would ever even disturb a boat like this driving around Gulf of Mexico. You could have totally carried out an attack like this back in the day with no problem. And I think that's kind of why people were so paranoid.
Certainly there was no outward indication that the air base was the target of a biological warfare attack.
Biological warfare, maybe that's what they're talking about. Not a bioweapon, but biological warfare. I did not realize that's what we were talking about in this video, but that is fascinating. So many of these archival military things are about nuclear war or communism, but I have not seen very many on biological weapons. This is interesting that we're getting to see what our perception of biological warfare looked like, or what it could have possibly have been, and also what our reaction to it would have been. That's just very interesting. I'm excited to see.
Actual attack with an infectious agent. A tremendous patient load would have been imposed on them.
It's also interesting to see how they conceptualized biological attacks. I think of biological weapons as viruses that you give to people in cities and kill a whole city. I do not think of a gas that you spray out in the open and let it form a cloud that hits an airbase. They were thinking about this so totally differently than how we think about it now. And I think the way they were thinking about it was a lot more tactical too. I feel now we have pre-established ways of using biological weapons, so we don't just have to be ready for any random boat on the Gulf of Mexico to dispel a bioweapon on us. We had to be so observant back then.
The operations of the base would have been seriously hampered, or possibly even completely disrupted.
I'm just curious what exactly this perceived or this fake bioweapon is that it could shut down a whole airstrip. Even mustard gas, I don't think you could just gas out a whole airstrip from 5 miles away. I don't know. Maybe I don't know mustard gas well enough, but it seems hard to believe that you could disperse a bioweapon over such a large area and still have it be effective.
In another test, a similar type of disseminating device, loaded with simulant agent, was fitted into the luggage compartment of an automobile.
Okay, so these are all tests. I mean, obviously I knew that these weren't actual bioterrorists or whatever, but I was curious if they were actually using some sort of biologically engineered weapon, or if they're just testing out how particles spread in the air.
And connected to the exhaust pipe of the car. The operating controls of the unit were placed on the front seat so that the driver could easily start and stop the dissemination and vary the rate of output.
I just feel back in the day, this would have been easy to catch. You get pulled over, it's sir, what's that box on your seat? And it's oh, this is just my regular box with little freaking switches on it. I just feel this is mad sus to have on the front seat of your car. I feel even a police officer back then would get that this is a suspicious act.
Driven along a public road upwind.
Look at all these cars, though. I love seeing the old U.S. too. It's so funny because it's so similar, but it's also wow, all the cars looked different.
Wind of the air base, The vehicle appeared no different from any other car with a slightly smoky exhaust. No one paid any attention to the car, the driver, or to the exhaust, which in fact was a BW aerosol drifting toward the airbase. Applying the results of this test to a large, densely populated city such as Washington, the tremendous casualty-producing potential...
Dang, that's insane. So were they actually expecting like one little car with gas to be able to produce like so much of a bioweapon that it like put out a whole city like this? I mean, this is a crazy map. I actually think this is really cool. I don't know. I guess they didn't really have the tools to know that one way or the other. It's crazy to think that like they were basing all of this on what had just happened in World War II, right? This is what, 59? Had Korea even happened yet? Or is this mostly just like our basis is what the Nazis and the Soviets used to fight each other with? And did we just think that this was going to become... That's really the craziest thing about all this, is that we thought bioweapons might have just been like the new form of warfare, you know? Like there is a universe where we set down our guns and like picked up like the, I don't know, viruses or whatever, you know, to use against each other. It's so bizarre to see this from a time where we didn't know what the future was going to be like. Obviously, we never know what the future is going to be like, but we didn't know that bioweapons were going to be less favorable to the Soviets than just like nuclear warheads. It's so interesting to see how seriously we took this as a threat. Obviously, we should have, but I don't know if anything like this ever happened.
Such as Washington, the tremendous casualty-producing potential of biological warfare becomes frightening.
Dang, I think this is like the mail building. This is, again, a little unrelated. I think I've been into this building. I used to give tours of DC, and I've never seen it from above, but this is like the biggest building in DC. If it's the one I'm thinking of, this is like, I mean, not the Pentagon, obviously, but this is like the biggest freaking building if you ever go on the inside.
And it would be so easy to contaminate the air with infectious organisms. These disseminating devices were merely jury-rigged affairs, easily duplicated with parts obtainable in any city.
Again, this icon, I wonder what this icon means. Is this like a real icon? Is this like, I don't know, I'm getting a certain vibe from this. This is like the umbrella icon, or like, this feels like a made up icon for a movie for like the evil corporation, you know? It almost feels like the hazardous like nuclear waste icon also.
At the U.S. Army Chemical Corps Proving Ground, tests were conducted using an F-100...
Chemical Corps Proving Ground. All right, so this was the Chemical Corps that produced this program, which I didn't actually know existed either. The U.S. Chemical Corps. That's, again, that's like such a strange thing that I just did not know about before watching this. I wonder if the Chemical Corps is still a part of the Army. It must be, right? There's no way we got rid of anything in the Army.
Aircraft equipped with an experimental spray device developed by one of the...
I like also how we started with learning how to like detect or learning how to see, but now we're getting into like, we're actually figuring out how to like use bioweapons. Like part of this is to defend America, but the other half is to also just to use these weapons ourselves. It just, that's what I feel like we're watching here, is like not safety tests, but like use tests, you know?
Large aviation companies. One purpose of these tests was to establish the feasibility of producing BW aerosols in the most effective particle size range.
One of the reasons behind this test is to figure out the best way to make weapons like this, which again, you could argue is just so that you can better defend yourself against it. But I have a feeling that this was all being written down for the future. This was all done with the expectation that we might need to use this one day, not just defend ourselves from it.
As a low-level line source from high-speed aircraft. Wind tunnel tests had shown that effective aerosols could be produced by discharging the BW agent into a high-velocity airstream. To confirm the wind tunnel test data, an aerial mission was conducted using a BW incapacitating agent. Flying at subsonic speed, the F-100 disseminated the liquid agent along a 15-mile line upwind of the test grid.
Oh man, I love these animations like this. It's just funny, so funny to think that the US States Army Chemical Corps had a branch of it dedicated to animations for media programs. Like who within the United States Army made this animation? I'm just curious about that, you know?
Data from these tests were used
Oh man, I feel so bad looking at this. Holy crap. Wait, I was not expecting this at all. This is 4 boxes of guinea pigs with their heads stuck. This is messed up.
to determine the effective coverage that could be expected with an operational type spray system employing the basic principles of the experimental device. This study showed that one fighter aircraft flying on the deck and dispensing 2 wing tanks of a liquid BW agent would cause infection in more than 50% of the populace in an area 125 miles long.
That's actually crazy that how effective biological weapons could be. Like if it's just a virus, like you just need somebody to encounter it once so you can actually just spread like a virus over a geographic area like this. That is wild. I understand why people were so worried about this sort of thing happening because like a bomb, you can't drop a bomb across 30 miles, 125 miles by 35 miles. Like you can't destroy this whole area with one bomb, even a nuke, but you can kill everyone inside this area with a biological weapon. So I guess I understand why we were so concerned with this.
By 30 miles deep. 3 large aircraft could release sufficient agent to infect over 50% of the people.
Dang, that's nuts. Is all it would have taken was 3 planes flying over Pennsylvania to destroy the entire state? That's nuts. Or at least 50% of the entire state. Even that. To Thanos snap Pennsylvania, all it would have taken was 3 aircraft and a bunch of chemicals. That's nuts.
People in an area equivalent to a belt 140 miles wide, extending from New York to Chicago.
Dang, not even just Pennsylvania. They zoomed out. It's also Ohio and Indiana. That's nuts.
Comparable to the total area of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana.
Dude, what does this symbol mean? Oh my gosh. I'm going to see this symbol like tattooed on the back of somebody's neck, and I'm just going to have the worst feeling about it. Volunteer exposure to a BW agent? I got to see this. No, are they actually just exposing people to it? Oh no, oh my god, it's a bunch of monkeys and guinea pigs. This is so messed up. I guess this is why we call lab experiments guinea pigs, right? This is just, I did not expect to see this at all. Look at all these monkeys. Oh my god, this is horrible.
Volunteers and test animals were exposed in the field.
I don't know if those are monkeys or apes also. Don't come at me, all right? I just think they're monkeys.
To a mildly incapacitating BW agent. Aerosol generators were located on a line.
Dang, seeing these guys in the outfits too, this is all becoming very serious very fast, I think, seeing this.
Several thousand feet upwind from the groups of men and animals.
It's also crazy that we were like manufacturing bioweapons and then just like exposing them into the environment to see what happened, like that. Like we knew what could happen and we just didn't know like the severity or the extent to which people would get infected by this stuff. It's just crazy that we were experimenting on our own lands with like weapons like this. I don't know what other lands to experiment on. It's a lose-lose to research chemical weapons or biological weapons because you always have to try them on your own population or your own land first.
When preparations were complete, the generators were fired. Even though the volunteers could not see, taste, or smell the aerosol as it drifted by, they later developed symptoms typical of the disease as a result of inhaling the infectious organisms.
Dude, so I just want to know what organisms they're infecting them with. Like, what is the biological weapon here? They're not talking about it. I don't even know if they will.
As each subject developed the characteristic fever, therapy was instituted. All responded to treatment and recovered completely.
I don't know. Something about them saying that makes me think that's not true. Something saying that, like, everyone recovered perfectly fine. Like, you wouldn't need to say that if there wasn't a reason for it. I don't know. Again, this symbol. Oh my gosh, what does the symbol mean? Does anyone watching before looking it up know what this symbol means? Is this like a biohazard symbol? Is that what this is? Is this like there's the radioactive symbol? There's no way this is the biohazard symbol. I feel like I've seen the biohazard symbol. Isn't it like 3 like loops or something? I don't know. What's this symbol, man? Is it the chemical core? Is this the symbol of the US military chemical core? I don't know.
This laboratory test demonstrates the casualty effect
Oh God, not a bunny. Oh, the casualty of a bunny.
of a non-persistent nerve gas developed by the United States Army Chemical Warfare Laboratories.
Jeez, oh no. No, don't do it.
Healthy rabbit.
Oh my God, and I was thinking about rabbits earlier when I recorded the other video. Oh man, this rabbit is gonna die on camera, isn't it?
Is placed
I'm gonna watch this rabbit die.
in a sealed chamber containing a small amount of the toxic gas. The clock timer on the wall
You can tell this rabbit knows something's up. Oh, and the symbol's behind it too. What is the symbol?
indicates the number of seconds
It must be like a bioweapon symbol.
the animal has been exposed to the gas. The chemical agent rapidly begins to take effect, and in 55 seconds, the animal is incapacitated.
Yeah, I didn't like watching that. I do not like seeing animals being harmed, especially for like really no reason at all. I'm glad they didn't show us the rest, though. It's fine to see an animal spasming for a little, but it is a little messed up, I think, to show it. Experimenting on animals is also wrong, but it's like another level of wrong to show your experiments. I'm glad I didn't have to watch that rabbit die.
Test was equivalent to only 1 drop of the chemical in liquid form.
Oh, well, there it is. It's not moving anymore. I guess it's moving a little.
The chemical acts on
What does everyone watching think? Did this rabbit actually die for this program, or are they just giving it like a chemical that it can recover from? I wonder.
the nervous system and causes respiratory failure.
It's so messed up to think that they did this all just to record it, you know? Like they didn't. I feel like they already knew that this chemical could kill a rabbit in a box within a minute, but they just wanted to show us that. So they did this experiment again. I feel like this rabbit didn't need to die.
Death occurred after the animal had been exposed to the gas for 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
Dang, so that rabbit really is dead. Oh, come on. Don't say you're going to test it on all these dogs. Or are these goats?
In the field, goats have
Oh, God. Don't say you're going to test it on the goats now.
been exposed to concentrations of the agent from a gas-filled artillery shell.
Oh, my God. I never even thought about that. A gas-filled artillery shell? So you could actually just, like, shoot, like, gas bioweapons across like enemy lines at each other. This is the paranoia that led to all of these horrific experiments taking place, is the fear that somebody might actually do that one day.
The test animals were placed in a trench to protect them from the fragmentation and blast effects of the artillery round. One of the goats had been fitted with a protective mask.
Oh God, yeah, I am not very hopeful for these goats.
A 155 millimeter
I wonder if this video is even going to be monetizable after this.
howitzer mounted on a tower
If this gets my video demonetized, I will be pissed.
was aimed at the center of the circular target area. After the howitzer had been loaded and test personnel had retreated to a safe distance, the weapon was fired by remote control. 1 minute after the shell exploded, the animals were incapacitated by the effects of the gas. Some of the
Oop, there it is. There's a dead goat for you. Oh man, no animals were harmed in the making of this
animals
program.
were dead after 5 minutes.
Jeez, that's crazy. First off, why did you need like 10 goats for that? Couldn't you have just used one? But also, like, isn't this gas just in the air in America somewhere? Like, weren't people worried that like the nearest city might catch a whiff of this? I don't know. Like, it just seems so bizarre that you're just experimenting with like these nerve gases out in the open. You know, like this just seems dangerous all around.
And within 15 minutes, all had expired except the goat having the mask.
Well, that's nice. At least we were making goat gas masks. I wonder if those ever got used even once. This goat is probably traumatized, though.
Similar field tests were made with animals placed inside a tank. Here again, one of the goats was protected with a mask. In contrast to the earlier test, a gas shell of small caliber was used, and the amount of agent released was, of course, much less.
Dang, so they're testing to see if you could shoot a missile with like nerve agent or whatever at another tank and kill the people inside, not with an explosive, but with the gas or with the biological weapon that was contained within the bullet. That's like, again, that is nuts. I try to avoid saying this, but this is crazy.
5 minutes after the shell
Dead
detonated
animals, bro, why do I gotta see dead animals?
against the tank, the unmasked animals were dead from
That's a dead animal. There's no tricking yourself there.
the effects of the gas.
Oh, this is totally gonna be demonetized.
This test is an example of how toxic gas can be used to penetrate in
Man, come on. This was fun, but now it's not. We're not even halfway through, too, dang.
closed places and attack personnel protected in hard targets.
Dude, shout out to that goat with the gas mask on, though. How did it win that prize? This goat just lived through, like, the worst, like, biological war there has ever been.
The destructive action of the nerve gases can be illustrated by a few simple sketches.
Okay, this is cool. This is actually going to show us what the nerve gas does. Again, who is in charge of making these animations for the U.S. Army? I'm curious.
This represents a normal nerve ending.
Damn, is that the Mr. Beast font? That looks exactly like the Mr. Beast font.
And this, a normal muscle. The transmission of an impulse from the nerve ending to the muscle involves the liberation of tiny quantities of a chemical called acetylcholine, which triggers a muscle action. After a nerve-directed muscle contraction, the enzyme cholinesterase almost immediately inactivates the acetylcholine, permitting the muscle to relax again, and thus the muscle action is terminated.
This is such a rudimentary animation, but I love it because this is the sort of thing that I have to make animations for myself, and I can just tell that like they didn't know how to do this, you know? Like they just made it so simple. It's so antiquated. It's so funny to see animators struggling with the same problems that I still struggle with in animation to this day. Because like no matter what, like you have to figure out a way to show something visual that isn't actually a visual occurrence, you know? Like there is no way to view this nerve ending and muscle cell interacting like this. So you have to come up with a way of showing it. It's so funny to see them struggle with it too.
Nerve gases knock out cholinesterase, allowing an excess of acetylcholine to accumulate. As a result, the stimulation to muscle action by acetylcholine becomes uncontrolled, and the neutralizing or relaxing effect of cholinesterase becomes less and less, depending upon the severity of the nerve gas exposure. The drug atropine, long used in medicine as a
You know, I will say that was a good explanation though. Now I do feel like I understand how this works.
anesthetic agent, can block the effects of accumulated acetylcholine and thereby help to control muscle stimulation. Thus, atropine can prevent the destructive action of nerve gases.
Mental incapacitators, psychochemicals. Interesting. I feel like I shouldn't be watching this. I feel like the US government did not declassify this and I'm just getting to watch something that I shouldn't be. Psychochemicals. That sounds like an interesting area of chemicals.
The psychochemicals, or K agents, being developed by the Chemical Corps, comprise a new family of incapacitating agents. These non-lethal chemicals...
Oh no, not a cat. They can't kill a cat, right? Like, maybe you can kill a goat, but you can't kill a cat.
have an astonishing capacity to cause abnormal behavior in man and animal.
No. Please. Dang, he just yeeted that mouse in there, though. That was pretty funny.
In laboratory experiments, a normal cat displays the typical hunter instinct toward a mouse. A minute quantity of lysergic acid diethylamide.
Wait, hang on. Lysergic acid diethyl. I feel like I know what they're dealing with here.
LSD is administered in
Okay, of course, I always do that. I always pause right before they say the thing that I'm curious about. So they're feeding this cat LSD, I think is what they're saying.
in aerosol form.
An aerosol form of LSD? Can we find that? Like, can we can we spray that on like crowds at like, I don't know, concerts or something? I feel like there's a market for aerosolized LSD that our government has not explored yet.
This chemical begins to react on the brain, and after 45...
That's so funny that they needed to experiment with this. They set up this experiment like, all right, a cat without this drug will just attack this mouse. But now that this cat is on LSD tripping balls, like he can't even attack the mouse. Like somebody needed to be told that, you know?
seconds, the effects of the psychochemical become...
He's freaking out though. He is bugging.
apparent. The cat is no longer interested in catching the mouse.
This mouse is going nuts too. It's attacking him. They must all be exposed to it, right? There's no way the cat is exposed to the LSD and the mice aren't. I can't believe I'm watching a cat on LSD right now. This is part of the reason this channel was made, is so that this doesn't get lost, right? This cat was, let's just say it, this cat was sort of tortured, sort of abused. It was given LSD. I don't know where that falls, but suffering was incurred by this animal for this purpose, and without us watching it, that sacrifice was for nothing. But now we finally get to appreciate this cat's sacrifice for our safety, right? We get to watch it trip on LSD.
Is to be afraid of it.
It does not look very fun. Honestly, I've never taken LSD, and it doesn't look like a good time based on what I'm seeing.
And in fact appears to be afraid of it. Just a small quantity of LSD is sufficient to upset the normal physical and emotional behavior pattern.
This cat is absolutely tweaking like crazy, though.
To observe the effects of the psychochemical...
Oh, please show us this on the actual people. That's what I want to see. I don't like experimenting on animals, but I am fine with seeing a bunch of army men take LSD. I want to see that.
on humans, enlisted volunteers were asked to take part in a carefully controlled test.
Yes, this is what I want. The men who stare at goats. Is this men who stare at goats? Is this like the same thing? Oh man, I wonder. They were using goats too. Oh my gosh. And LSD. Oh, this is totally the men who stare at goats.
Prior to the test, the men behaved in a well-disciplined manner, responding promptly to commands and executing movements with precision. During a break, each of the volunteers, except the drill sergeant...
Dude, this is what I would have volunteered for if I had to be in the army. I'd be like, yeah, go fight. When was this made? 59? Go fight in like Korea, or go take a bunch of LSD in this back parking lot. Like, this would be me. I wouldn't be surprised if I saw my family in here.
Received a minute dose of the psychochemical in coffee, and about 30 minutes later, the squad was ordered to fall in. Now the response of the men is entirely different. They have ceased to be alert, but have become relaxed.
That's so funny how the cat was like freaking out hardcore, and these guys are just like nothing but smiles. I wonder if there's any reason for that, if it's a different LSD or if cats just don't mess with LSD.
Relaxed and carefree. They cannot control the impulse to laugh, and they no longer behave like well-disciplined troops.
Who needed to do this test, right? Like, who needed to give these guys LSD to know that they wouldn't be as good of soldiers under LSD? It's just like, this seems like so useless information to me.
The drill sergeant has not received any of the psychochemical, and he issues commands as before. But the response of the men is sluggish, and their movements ragged. They have become confused, irrational, and uncontrollable.
That is actually hilarious that some of these guys are just walking in the complete opposite direction they're supposed to. I wonder how much they were given. It's tough because I've never taken LSD, but I wonder if there's like a state where you can still like accept orders, but just like not care as much. And then there's a state where you are just like incapacitated because these people are obviously still marching. They're still trying to do what they are being told to do, but they just like can't do it themselves. I'm wondering what state of mind that they are in. Obviously, I know they're on LSD, but I wonder, like, I don't know, I guess I wonder what LSD is like.
Seeing the effects of this chemical compound, it is not difficult to imagine the havoc that could be created among weapons crews and command headquarters in time of war.
I don't want to say that's funny, but it is really funny to think, like, instead of having nuclear war with Russia, we just had like LSD war with them, like like Armageddon, but everything is just LSD instead. Like like mutually assured destruction, but it's just LSD gas. I think that's a better world than what we live in now. I think if we just fought wars with LSD gas, we actually might be closer to world peace.
In the continuing search for incapacitating agents, the chemical warfare laboratories are investigating a great many chemical compounds.
Dude, I bet so many crazy chemicals were discovered by this that I bet we're not even allowed to know about some of the chemicals they came up with trying to create this sort of stuff. There are secrets in here. There are so many secrets in the U.S. Chemical Corps archives.
One of these, CS-4640,
CS-4640, just a random chemical,
is of particular interest as a potential incapacitator. A very small amount of this compound produces...
I also think it's hilarious how much military funding went into funding designer synthetic drugs. You know, like, we figured out the best ways to make LSD just for this purpose.
This is partial paralysis in laboratory animals. The amount required is indicated in this comparison with an ordinary aspirin tablet. The two dogs...
Oh my god, now we're doing dogs. We really are just experimenting on everyone's most beloved animals. This is nuts.
...to be used in this test have been...
Oh my god, I'm totally gonna be demonetized for this too. Demonetized and demonized by everyone who I forced to watch this with me. Sorry to everyone watching who did not want to watch this today. You have a choice. I don't have a choice. I have to keep watching, but you can turn it off here, all right? I don't want to know what happens to these dogs. Hopefully they just have a good LSD time and then they relax, but I'm not feeling good about watching this, I guess. You know what? But I said that earlier. At least their sacrifices are being appreciated by us now, right? I salute these dogs. These dogs are true Americans.
Previous tests exposed to effective doses of the chemical in previous tests and have always recovered completely.
Okay, that's good. They recover completely. But that's the thing. How are you just experimenting with random chemicals and you're knowing they're not doing any sort of damage? Like, you don't know. You don't know the long-lasting effects of any of these drugs. They just don't have any immediately noticeable effects. I guarantee you there are some wrong things with these dogs after doing these tests.
A dilute solution of CS-4640 is prepared for use in creating an aerosol of the chemical in an exposure chamber. Although exposure to the aerosol...
Oh no, don't do it. Come on.
About 30 seconds.
How did these people not feel so evil doing this?
For about 30 seconds is sufficient for the chemical to take effect. In this test, the dogs will...
Oh my gosh. See, this, again, I hate seeing this, but it's important for people to see how we did experiment on animals back in the day, right? This is valuable for you at home who has never seen this, just like I've never seen this sort of stuff, to actually see that it did happen. We have experimented on animals, and we've done it in really bizarre ways.
Breathe the aerosol for 1 minute. Exposure began...
It's funny that we didn't have a better method of getting them exposed to this gas besides just holding their snouts up to a hole.
...at 0900 hours. In numerous experiments, temporary paralysis has been produced in a variety of laboratory animals. Mice, rats, guinea pigs, rabbits, cats, dogs,
They're just listing all the animals. So they have tried this with every different sort of animal. See, again, what is the added benefit? Like, once you know what it does, why like try it on a different animal? I mean, I know why. I know animals can have different reactions to different things, but with this sort of stuff, it just seems cruel. It just seems like we had too many dogs and not enough ways of getting rid of them.
Goats and monkeys. After 1 minute, the dogs were removed from the exposure chamber. On animals, the effect of a small dose of CS4640.
Dang, look at these dogs. They're just like pooped out now. I think they do get better. I don't think this actually hurt them, but it is just sad to see them like knocked out like this.
Is similar to that of a very much larger dose of morphine. It paralyzes the skeletal muscles, depending on the size of the dose in relation to...
These guys aren't even like writing any of this down. They're just watching, you know? I mean, I guess they have a camera, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like they needed to do this experiment.
The weight of the animal, the paralysis can...
Like, oh wow, the paralyzing agent caused paralysis. Like, wow, but like write that down. They're not writing anything down because they're not learning anything new from this, you know? They're just gassing these dogs.
Can be made to last from 1 to several hours. About 10 minutes after the chemical had taken full effect, the black dog was given an injection of an antidote. A couple of minutes later, the paralysis had disappeared, and the black dog was normal again.
I have a hard time believing there wasn't some sort of brain damage involved with that.
Without treatment, the other dog...
That is miraculous, though, that we were able to not only create very specific, like, targeted gases or targeted chemicals for specific neural pathways, and we were also able to create cures for them, which, you know, it just seems like that would have taken so much more work. I don't know. It's just like, it's one thing to create a chemical that can destroy other things, right? But it's another thing to create a chemical that can put everything back together or that can reverse any of the damage that's been done. It seems more complicated than making something that's harmful to make something that actually helps you. That's what I said. It's just miraculous that we already at this time had the dangerous chemicals and their antidotes, or for lack of a better term.
Dog remained paralyzed. The paralysis produced by the exposure to CS4640 for 1 minute lasted 1 hour, after which the brown dog recovered.
I don't know. They just cut to the brown dog standing up perfectly fine. If something bad did happen to that dog, they could have made this cut still. And they could have filmed this beforehand, I guess.
This incapacitating chemical compound is still in the research stage, and no data are yet available as to its effects on humans.
Yeah, okay, now I know I've said a lot about this icon or this symbol, but now this is the symbol of like animal lab testing to me, you know? Like this symbol has only become like more sinister over my viewing experience. It looks like the sort of symbol like a group of evil supervillains would have. CW defense. All right. I hope what they say is the best defense is a good offense.
Against the effects of toxic chemicals, the protective mask has always been the most important piece of individual equipment.
I guess there is a moment in history where we thought wars were going to be waged using traditional, like, kinetic firearms and gases. It's very clear from this that we expected both soldiers and civilians to be encountering biological weapons. And it's interesting to think that, like, World War II had just ended at this point, and we thought more wars might be coming, and if so, then they would definitely include this sort of stuff. I'm glad that hasn't really happened. I mean, obviously, chemical or biological weapons have been used to a degree, but I don't think the worst case scenario in these people's minds came to fruition. I think we actually avoided a huge bullet or a huge nerve gas cloud by not going this route. I'm glad we did. I guess I'm glad we experimented on all these animals if it meant we didn't end up going in this route. I'm not glad we experimented on the animals, though, just to clear that up. I'm glad that we avoided necessitating even more of that sort of stuff. Because if that really took off, then we really would have needed to do much more testing. So I'm glad it stayed as small as it possibly could have. Or I'm glad it didn't get as big as we expected it to.
It fully protects the delicate respiratory tract. But there are several chemical agents which have a percutaneous effect. By absorption through the skin, they can cause casualties or even death. Nerve gases are so toxic that a very small amount of the
Oh man, are we watching these form in real time? This is nasty.
liquid in contact with the skin can have a casualty effect.
Oh, okay, these are just drops. I thought these were like boils under the skin.
For these, the protective mask alone is not sufficient. The whole body must be protected with combat clothing which has been specially treated. After exposure to chemical attack, even though protective clothing and masks are worn, further precautionary action may be necessary to prevent casualties.
Again, who is this even for? Like, are you showing soldiers this? Or are you showing, like, you can't be showing this to kids in a classroom, right? There's no way you're showing them this. I don't even know if I'm supposed to be seeing this, let alone kids, but I wonder who is supposed to see this. This must have been like a training video for soldiers or something. Again, I can't imagine why the U.S. Chemical Corps would produce this video. I obviously understand why they would do this research, but what's the point of the video? Like, who are they trying to educate on this?
For this purpose, an individual decontamination and treatment kit, E21, has been developed. A dusting bag contains a decontaminating chemical and a small capsule of agent indicator.
This is actually really interesting. So we actually had tools to deal with chemical or biological attacks. That's like, I didn't know that. We know we like had products ready to go if I just got like mustard gas.
Dye. By crushing and kneading, the capsule is broken and the dye indicator is intimately mixed with the dusting powder. The decontaminating powder will neutralize small droplets and aerosols of nerve gas. At the same time, the presence of larger drops will be quickly revealed by a color change of the dye indicator. Small metal patches are provided to seal off these spots of gross contamination so as to prevent any possibility of the nerve gas penetrating through the clothing to the skin. The decontaminant is also applied to pieces of individual equipment.
Just like imagine a world where this was like the standard way of waging war. I don't know. It's so bizarre to think that like we were preparing for this sort of world. And again, I'm just so glad it didn't happen.
To prevent secondary contamination, which might result from handling the equipment.
Just like imagine every soldier carrying around a purse full of powder to powder everything with. That's just, again, such an unforeseen way that war could have been waged.
Equipment. Blotting cloths are provided for removing any of the liquid agent which may have splashed on the skin. The affected skin area is then swabbed with a small bag of decontaminating material which has been moistened with water.
I'm super curious about this decontaminating material. Like, what could we have made that, like, counteracts pretty much like any nerve gas? It's so complicated and so amazing that we already had products like this ready to go.
The E21 kit can be used to decontaminate mustard as well as the nerve gases.
I was about to say, I don't know if this would actually be good against like mustard gas or whatever, but they just said like this could even be helpful for that sort of stuff, which I don't know. I didn't think you could even survive mustard gas.
It is scheduled to undergo final engineering tests in the fourth quarter of FY60. No change has been made in the method of impregnating outer garments of protective clothing, but the protective underwear has been vastly improved over the World War II type, which was uncomfortable to wear and often caused skin irritation.
This is so funny. So is this like the Army standard issue underwear?
Developed in coordination with the Quartermaster Research and Development Center, it is a soft-textured, lightweight cotton fabric treated with Hycar and gives good protection against liquid toxic agents. Its protective property is not diminished by perspiration or laundering,
and therefore does not require reimpregnation, as was the case with the older type.
The newly standardized field protective mask, M17, is much improved over older types. Vision and voice transmission are better, and having no external canister, it is streamlined and more comfortable to wear.
Yeah, I feel like these sort of masks are like the nuclear Armageddon masks that you see. It doesn't look safe to have these masks, but obviously I know it's safer to have a mask than not have a mask. But these, just this image, I feel like conjures so much terror in people still to this day. Like seeing people in gas masks is like, I don't know, it's a scary possibility that we might have had to face.
New special purpose masks have also been developed. For the helicopter pilot is the E75 mask, which provides unrestricted vision and is fitted with a special dynamic microphone for aircraft radio communication. Of similar design is a special mask for armored personnel with an added feature for the comfort and efficiency of the tank crew. Provision is made for connecting the individual's canister to a large central canister in the tank.
Dang, he's even got this little icon on his bag. That must be like the chemical corps symbol or something.
While operating the tank, air is supplied under pressure from the large canister to the mask of each crew member, and breathing becomes effortless. A quick release connection permits the crew to bail out rapidly without loss of mask protection. Still another type of special mask has been developed for the casualty who is unable to wear his M17 mask because of head wounds.
Wow, that's interesting. They developed a mask specifically to put over somebody who already has a head injury. Like, they were really taking this threat seriously, and they were coming up with solutions to it, so fast. It's one thing to be aware of all the issues that might arise, but it's another thing to just be ready with the solution when it happens. I guess that's what made the US military so dominant for a time. It's just how prepared we were for everything. And you could, even this, to have a gas mask you could put on a person whose head is hurt. We were clearly anticipating this to be a useful thing,
Bag-like in shape, it is made of filter material and equipped with clear plastic eyepieces. A gas-tight seal is formed by means of a drawstring which maintains...
They have a drawstring around the neck to keep the gases out. Yeah, keep the gases out, all right.
...moderate pressure around the neck.
Yeah, that seems like a great idea. They have a head injury, so let's just draw a string around their neck as tight as we can to prevent the gases from getting in.
Thus, the patient is protected while being moved through a toxic atmosphere.
I am so curious if this ever was used for real. Is there even one scenario where the US military used this mask? I bet that's classified, or I bet we have no knowledge of it, but please, if there is a whistleblower in the comments who is ready to tell the story of how you use this mask, please let us know.
...atmosphere to an aid station or hospital. Point source alarms have been developed to detect and automatically warn of the presence of nerve-type chemical agents, which in vapor or aerosol form are odorless and invisible.
Yeah, we developed so much technology just for this one scenario. We have point source detectors that just are able to, filter the air and tell you when there's nerve gas in it. It's just, we were preparing for there to be so much biological war, it's terrifying to learn just how much we believed this was going to happen. It doesn't even seem like they're referring to this as a possibility, but as a probability or an eventuality, really. We were so invested. We expected this to be used so much that we invested so much money into avoiding it, It's bizarre.
The larger model on the right has been adopted by the United States Navy for shipboard use. The smaller model.
And again, I'm curious if these were ever actually used. Like if these were put on boats in Navy ships, like did anyone ever actually turn that on for any reason? Did anyone ever actually use biological weapons against us?
Is a later development which carries its own power source. These alarms continuously sample the atmosphere through a chemically treated paper. A concentration of toxic agent in the air well below the level required to cause casualties produces a color change on the paper. This is detected by a photoelectric cell activating the alarm system.
I like that, a photoelectric cell. So pretty much it's just a camera trained at a piece of paper, and when it changes a color, it makes the alert go off. Like that's very simple, but I guess that's very complex to do back in the day. A photoreceptor, like that must have been really hard to make. So it's funny that that's a very simple technology, but for the time that it was being used and made, that's like a very advanced thing.
Mouth-to-mouth resuscitation is a newly developed technique of artificial respiration. In addition to medication, nerve gas casualties often may require aid in breathing. With one hand, the operator raises the patient's chin to open up his throat and upper airway. With the other hand, she holds his nose closed. Then she takes a deep breath and inflates his lungs, just like blowing up a balloon. The gauge at the upper right registers the percent oxygen saturation of the blood, as measured by an ear oximeter. Note how it falls off when the worker stops the treatment. This patient is quite incapable of breathing by himself.
Yeah, is this guy good, or is he just like another guinea pig? Is he one of the people who volunteered for experimentation, or is he just a cadaver from the local hospital?
And without artificial respiration, the oxygen saturation of his blood soon drops to a low level. When the treatment is resumed, the oximeter reading rapidly returns to normal. The basic scientific groundwork for mouth-to-mouth resuscitation was performed by the chemical warfare laboratories, and the clinical research was conducted under the auspices of the Army Medical Service at Baltimore City Hospital. It is expected that this method of artificial respiration will be adopted by the armed forces.
It's so funny because like they're just anticipating like every military guy in the whole army to learn how to do this for each other. And I'm just picturing like the whole military just like putting their mouth against each other's to learn this. I don't know. It's so funny that like this act is the last line of like human defense. Like we have all this technology, all these gas masks and everything, but like if it gets right down to it, like somebody's gonna have to go mouth to mouth on you. I don't know. It's just funny. Oh wow, and that's the end right there for official use only. See, that's what I'm saying. It's shit like that. It's like what's the official use? Like what's the use? Who got this? Who was given this? Who was showing this to other people? What does the symbol mean? Oh my goodness, there's so much mystery still. Wow, so that was vulnerability to covert attack. You know, I thought this was going to be more like spies and like sneaky. I did not expect it to just be about biological weapons. Again, that was just another fascinating look into the paranoia that people were experiencing during this time. People were seriously worried about planes flying overhead and dumping nerve gas on them. People didn't know what to expect out of the next war, and it's wild to see all the different ways we prepared for that war. Watching stuff like this really does make me thankful for the time and place that I was born, that I didn't have to have this worry, or even worse, have this actual real life experience with this sort of chemical. I'm glad I don't have to worry about this sort of stuff. I'm glad we did so much research, though, that people would have been fine even if we did. Some people would have been fine even if we did encounter it. But I guess this sort of research was necessary, especially for the time. I get why people felt it necessary to do this sort of research. I don't know if I would have gone about it the same exact way. It's very fascinating to see how this all went down, because I feel like I've always heard about people doing these sorts of tests, like the Army tested people with LSD and that sort of stuff. I've always heard that sort of stuff, but I never actually seen it in action. And I feel like that is what this has provided for us, an actual real life example of the sorts of military experimentation that took place in the Cold War, at the beginning of the Cold War. So, yeah, this was another fascinating look into the paranoia of the 1950s and the 1960s. I guess this is also like a terrifying realization, though, that like biological weapons are still possible and can still be used. I hope this doesn't encourage somebody to look back into these sort of weapons, because that would really be a bummer. I am a little sad that I had to watch those animals get experimented on. I'm sure, or at least I hope you all are too, but it was like 60 years ago at this point. So those animals would have been dead no matter if they were experimented on or not. But that is, again, that's also funny that you can see people were a bit more open to watching animals be experimented on camera back then, as opposed to now. I feel like you would never film you doing that to an animal nowadays. So now we know what our vulnerability to covert attacks is. So I think with that, we are just going to cut to black.